on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
So I will call the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee meeting to order, and we welcome everyone to our meeting. Public comment is welcome, and if you wish to speak on an item as it's brought up on the agenda, you may do so. You would have up to 3 minutes. We would ask you to come forward to the lectern and state your name for the record and speak directly into the microphone so that we have good recording. Could the clerk call the roll?
Roll call. Groneman. Here. Philbrick.
Here.
Markley. Here. Kane. Here. Johnson. Bynum.
Here. There are no revisions on tonight's agenda, and the first order of business is minutes from September 23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign, and the minutes are approved. We've got 12 total items on this Public Works agenda, so firm and focused will be our motto. Number 1 is an agreement with KCK Schools for the Bruni Elementary infrastructure improvements. We've got Susan Alig with counsel and Troy Shaw. If you'll go ahead and describe the item.
Good evening. This is an agreement with USD 500 for some public infrastructure improvements to the roads that will service the new Bruni Elementary School. The roads are going to need some additional public investment. This agreement calls for the district to reimburse the unified government $600,000 towards the cost of those improvements.
And are you showing us
For clarity,
New
this,
alignment?
yes, for clarity, this is 90th Street. If you look at the southwest corner, that's where the medical center's at. 91st Street is the intersection just to the west. So this shows a realignment of 90th Street ultimately. And so the part that's gray is what's being built currently with the project. And then you can kind of see the dashed lines that go up as to what would be a future connection of 90th up to 91st. And then we could eliminate that offset crossing.
Gotcha.
91st Street with
Okay, so the gray is what's going to be built right now.
gray is what is
in
currently in
order
the project.
to align 90th north of Parallel and swing into the school. That's going to be the school entrance.
That will be a public road up to the point where the school's property line
Uh-huh.
is, then it'll turn into the school's.
Okay, and so in the meantime, since it's not going to swing all the way over to 91st for now, in the meantime, the 91st Street traffic signal stays put.
Correct.
Commissioner Kane?
There's a, right by the church is a sidewalk issue where the sidewalk stops. Has anybody even looked at that, about extending that sidewalk out where the kids could have walked from where the church is at all the way down to where the school is at?
On Parallel?
Yeah, correct.
I would have to check on that. I mean, you can see on this plan, you can see the dark black line.
Yes.
along the street. That is sidewalk, but I will look.
Okay.
I'll have to go look. But
And-
yeah,
and
it makes
it-
perfect sense to me.
Okay,
Check that.
all right, thank you.
All right, any other questions from the?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any, I will say, if anyone here from the public wants to address the item, now would be your time to step forward. And we do have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrick.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, that motion carries. And we will stay here for item 2, also on the Bruni Elementary project, a survey of lands. We have Mr. Bain here from legal. We have a survey of lands for pedestrian easement, also for the elementary school. Mr. Bain.
Thank you, Commissioner and other commissioners. Good evening. This resolution authorizes a survey for lands for a proposed sidewalk as part of the Bruni Elementary project. The sidewalk was discussed in the Planning Commission process for building the school. And the sidewalk is proposed to go west of where Waverly ends there through the field to the school.
Commissioner Kane?
Len and I went out and talked to the guy who lives on this property. The concern is there's a lot of coyotes and everything. So I think it's a good idea we put a sidewalk there, but I would also think we would want a fence and some lighting. And the fence to keep out the critters, and the lighting is just so the kids can see where they were going during the winter. And we walk back there, and it's kind of like, but well, Commissioner Bynum, it's like your house. You got coyotes all over the place, right? And
I raise them, though. Yes, it is like, you're right, it is like that.
And the concern is we need a fence to keep the coyotes out, and we need the lights so the kids can see where they're going.
We do, and he's right. Thanks for saying that, because it's kind of a lonely path from Waverly up to the school if you.
Well, in fact, there's a sinkhole, 75 yards to the north of there, that you could put a tanker truck in there.
Okay.
So the fence would be a mandatory issue, at least on the north side, but I think it should be lined where the kids could not be, and not just kids, but, society today.
Commissioners, I just want to note that this is a sidewalk that is one that we'll be asking the school district to construct as part of the project. So this is not a UG project.
I don't
per
care who
se.
constructs it, but,
I just wanted to make sure you understood that, but we'll relay that information.
and that's fine. I mean, I'm not shy.
Right, we'll make sure that we convey, and thank you for making note.
And you're right, it is their responsibility, not ours.
All right, any other comments or questions? Second. Any comments or questions from the audience? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrick.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that motion carries. The third item is survey of lands necessary for the water pollution control maintenance facility and the PD tow lot crime lab project. And we have Mr. Bain and Jeff Fisher's here with Public Works.
And so this item, much like the last, approves a survey to begin potential condemnation proceedings regarding the tow lot and crime lab and water pollution maintenance facility. I know we've had updates periodically over the last year on these projects, but that's the point where we're at now to explore using the eminent domain powers we have to acquire the land.
Commissioner Philbrook?
So do we have more than one location where we're looking at, or do we just have one general location that we're looking at?
We've looked at several. Right now, we are only focused on one, but as you know, this is a prudent step in any case.
Right.
So if we-
So I want it made very plain to the public what the process is going along with this condemnation, so they understand. You're the lawyer.
Well, I would tell you that the resolution does not limit you to one location. And so the resolution just authorizes surveys or one survey to take place. It says that the project is for public improvements, a public purpose. And that authorizes the survey, which then puts us down the road if we need to go to court to institute condemnation proceedings.
So what's the next step immediately after either you come to a resolution of an agreement with the owners to buy, or if you don't? What are the next steps on either way?
So the next steps, I think, are to continue negotiation with the owner. If there is no resolution there, a survey would have to take place to get the proper legal descriptions of what we are wanting to acquire. And of course, throughout this process, negotiations can continue to take place. After we get back the proper legal descriptions, we can make a filing with the district court to have a price determined. Appraisers come and appraise the land and tell the court what it's worth. The court enters a dollar figure, and the dollar figure is paid.
So does this come back to the commission at any time for approval?
It does. There would be, before the petition is filed with the court, we would come back to the commission for an ordinance authorizing the petition to be filed.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood the steps that happen, because people get a little upset or worried when you start talking condemnation.
Commissioner, I also want to note that your questions are a great line of questioning, because ultimately the goal is that we don't end up in the court in those proceedings. And I would say probably 90-some% of these that we go through do not end up there. In fact, we end up to a mutual agreement with the property owner. So what James has lined out is a process that we use so that we can expedite projects, but ultimately the goal is to come to an agreement with the property owner on the value of the property.
Well, yes, and I hope that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the public understands. Okay, that's why I'm making this very public, so people do understand what our process is. So thank you for clarifying this.
Questions? Anyone from the public have a comment on this item? All right, then I will entertain a motion. I'm sorry, Commissioner Kane, did you have a? Okay, I would take a motion, please.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second on this survey of lands. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman? Aye. Philbrook?
Aye.
Markley?
Aye.
Kane? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Kyra?
Aye, and that carries. Item 4 is a presentation on responsible bidder requirements. And, oh, hi. We have Deputy Chief Counsel Misty Brown to talk to us about responsible bidder requirements. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a resolution that states the unified government's desire to ensure that construction contracts are awarded in an environment that encourages competition, a trained workforce, and a safe workplace. It directs staff to work to develop additional requirements for responsible bidders and endorses the concept of responsible bidders.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Kane? All right.
Second.
Comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrick.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that motion carries. Item 5 is an update regarding the Hazelwood neighborhood with the traffic calming and whatnot that's going to accompany some development nearby, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We have Troy Shaw here with Public Works to tell us what's happening. This is just an update.
A couple meetings ago, Commission asked us to work with Hazelwood neighborhood related to a new development and concerns they had about cut-through traffic and speeding through the neighborhood once the development is done. Since that time, we've met with the neighborhood association, worked with them a little bit, and have also put out speed limit signs. We reduced our speed limit from 30 to 25 to be consistent with our ordinance. And I think that's worked out well so far for them with what we've heard. We are also taking steps as the plans come in for the new subdivision, to require them to provide traffic calming measures for the neighborhood, the Hazelwood Villas neighborhood, as well as the other neighborhood on the east side of the property, or look at that as well, and see how they can effectively manage traffic through that, anything that will cut through and speeding traffic.
So can we, I suppose as the new development progresses, could we maybe just come back around? I don't even know what time frame, Commissioner Kane.
Well, part of this was the first developer who wasn't doing what he was supposed to do in the first place, which magnified the issue. And then the fact that the dump trucks and all that stuff shouldn't have been where they were at, and they were going in the wrong entrance instead of the designated proper area. And then we tell them not to do it, and then they did it anyway. But I think we should have some cut and dry plans for future development that say the speed limit not to exceed 25 miles an hour. You go in this designated area, that's how you enter, that's how you leave. You know, they failed miserably, which is making it even that much worse for the next guy that wants to come in that has no idea what really happened.
Yeah.
So I think we would be better off with a plan that says, here's what you got to do up front, so we're ahead of the game, instead of the way you and I have been playing this, behind the fence.
So to address that a little bit, and tell me if I'm wrong on your concerns, but when they submit, the first set of plans they submitted was, I think, back in June. That's when we had the last set of plans. We're required with that, with the next submittal, to say, how are you going to address speeding issues before construction or during construction?
Right.
So it's in place the minute you get done with it as well. So that's going to be part of our requirements before plans are approved and they're even ready to start going. Along with that, we're going to require a traffic study to be done before any work gets done, so we know the traffic volume and the speeds that are currently out there before any development, and then we can also check that post-development and see what the difference is and if there's still additional requirements that are needed.
I think that's good. That's what I was trying to articulate, but not very well. So that's exactly what I was looking for, and Commissioner Kane is right. And if it could be incorporated across,
Right.
especially, we've got a number of things going on in Piper right now with new
Right,
construction.
and since we did the average of 25 miles an hour, I think that's going to make a huge difference.
I do too. Okay.
But the traffic study was done a long time ago, and then the other guy wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's huge that we tell them, like in your neighborhood, there's a way to get in and a way to get out with that heavy equipment, not to damage the roads, or you guys wouldn't have had to go out there and fix them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to stick to that.
And we can specify that for construction traffic as well.
Yeah.
We can tell them where they need to go, what roads to come in. We can't say you can't use the road, but we can tell you this is the road, how you get access to your property.
And if they can't, then what we need to do is take a good look at the road and see what the damage they did so they can fix it before they leave.
Very good, thank you. And this is an update item only. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much. Solid Waste Planning Committee, I cannot wait. Kirk Zuther is coming forward. This is an update for us on the annual report. It actually is an action item because it's a required annual report. Mr. Zuther.
Recently, the Wyandotte County Solid Waste Committee held its annual meeting, which is required by Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and we went through the Wyandotte County Solid Waste Plan. We looked at mainly the infrastructure of the solid waste in the community, as well as the goals from the 2015 solid waste plan. The biggest thing that we did in the meeting was, of course, everybody's aware of this now, is the reroute that was implemented this year. With staff and waste management last year, we sat down and we came up with the reroute that impacted a little over 14,000 homes, which evened out the number of houses per day and increased both the trucks for recycling and trash. Next year, the big item is going to be the 5-year update of the solid waste plan. So we'll be going into a lot more of the details next year as far as the infrastructure and the goals. So next year will be a big year.
Just a quick question for you.
Yes.
Just give us a couple of bullet points. Not the whole thing, just here and there, a highlight of what we're required by law to produce this update every year, correct?
Correct.
Next year, we're going to do a required 5-year update.
Correct.
What are some of the objectives, if you will, or the areas that we are required to produce the report on annually for solid waste?
Annually, we look at the goals and objectives that are in our 5-year plan and give the updates.
So we're updating annually within the scope of the 5-year plan we submitted 4 years ago?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner, anything? All right.
Second.
We have a motion and second, and I will take roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley. Aye. Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bindman.
Aye. Thank you very much. And that item passes. We have Mr. Jeff Fisher. He is our Public Works Director, and we are going to talk about recommended amendments to the benefit district policy. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. And if I may, I will report on TA Edison first.
Thank you. You want to report on TA Edison ahead of?
Please.
And then we'll talk about the benefit district policy. And the TA Edison is only an update item.
Correct.
Okay, so go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Well, of course, staff just working with Rosedale Development Association just wrapped up the public engagement over the last couple months. And so I want to hit on the results of that and then get into the proposed new policy. You might recall that the area we're talking about is bound by 47 to the south, Wood End to the north, 9th Place on the west, and roughly South 8th on the east. Working with RDA, there were 280 parcels that were notified directly. 37 came back as undeliverable. So of the remainder, 243, 34 people attended the open houses. 13 said yes, 20 said no, 1 had no opinion. Now, just kind of highlight the different areas of this neighborhood. This is one area, low turnout, all voted yes, fortunately. This is also an area that Aaron Strika thought there was really a higher level of interest in this part of the neighborhood than any other. And so we broke it up into a number of different sections. This one, again, low turnout, unfortunately, more no's than yeses. Another area, same. And then similar turnout here, and more no's than yeses. And then finally, this, so all in all, low turnout, unfortunately, more no's than yeses. There is one small area that is apparently more interested than the others. The point we're at now is, James pointed out in past discussions, that the commission is, by state statute, not required to take any action on these matters, and considering the results, and don't know where to go with this from here, but to discuss a new policy, and then if that community or other communities want to apply, they can through that new program.
So on this item, I'm going to ask if there's anyone here in the audience that wanted to make any comment on this particular neighborhood benefit district item. And okay, okay, thank you. All right, so no comments on this particular one, and that means we can then talk about the benefit district policy itself.
Yes,
Thank you.
First, want to recognize the great partnership with Aaron Straka and RDA. That's been real helpful. We also have discussed together the new policy that we're getting ready to highlight. This policy's been around a little while, and like any policy, a good practice to review and update periodically, so that's where we're at with this. These are big commitments that the commission considers in these benefit districts, so it's important to have a solid process. We've learned a lot from this T.A. Edison program over the last few years, so we want to make sure we capture that in a new policy. We have benchmarked other communities to see how they're handling these things. This proposed policy is actually modeled after Olathe mostly. So we're learning from their experiences. They have a number of active districts, and then try to avoid some of the confusion that we've had in the past. So comparable practice to some neighboring communities. Timelines are clearly defined. Everybody better understands those timelines and where their obligations are. Community engagements outlined, and then there's a cost assessment process that's more clearly defined. Some other updates. Generally, you have the packet, you have the suggested policy in your packet. It's comprehensive for sure. It's longer, more complex than what we've been operating from, but we think it's important and covers all the steps that are needed in a good policy. Community support applications, so administering the process is there, and then clear guidelines and timelines. So we did, since you received your packet, working with James and legal, make a few edits, and just want to point those out for your information. So the statement of interest shall be received by Director of Public Works within 120 days of the first signature. So that's different from what you have in your packet. We could also, at conclusion, talk about the 120 days and whether or not that's... Boy, I'm not sure there is a restriction on that.
The only restriction is that the signatures have to come from resident owners. So someone could sign it and move away. Their signature would no longer be a resident owner.
So that's shorter is better for that reason, but in some cases, that might be difficult depending on the scope and the nature of the scope of the work. Signatures of 80% of resident owners, I believe that was property owners or something to the like. So resident owners is the proper terminology, and by definition, an owner of property who has lived in the city for the previous 30 days.
Just one sec, sorry. Commissioner Kane.
We have a lot of rental property. So the people we're going to work with are the actual owners of the property. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
So the resident owner has lived in the city for the previous 30 days and owns property within the benefit district. So that would be the definition in this case. Petition must be signed by 100% of non-tax delinquent resident owners. Those are the three edits in your.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Okay, so just as Commissioner Kane just said, we have a lot of people that have rental property. And so, but you're stating that these owners have to be living within our community. Is that what you just said? Because there's a lot of owners that have property in Wyandotte County that are rent that don't live anywhere around here. So I guess my question would be is if we're looking to improve an area and we have all these people that have rental property but don't live, how is that going to affect doing something?
It's state statute that the petition, that if a community files a petition, the only signatures that count toward getting, the state statute requires 51% of resident owners to sign,
51%.
is what state statute requires in order to move on to the feasibility portion of the fact-finding portion of the benefit district. So that's state statute that outlines it has to be resident owners
Well, I
signing the
just wanted to
petition.
make sure I knew how many needed to be in a community. You see what I'm saying? Because otherwise, you're kind of like whistling in the wind.
Well, I don't know that there's a number that I don't know that there's a minimum number, but if they're in a benefit district, if there's 100 resident owners, under the statute, you need 51 to sign the petition. Under the policy, it's more than those. But you could have 500 houses, but only 100 resident owners. Those 100 resident owners are the only ones that
They're
count.
the only ones that count. Okay, that's what
right.
I need to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Markley, did you have a?
No, I was looking for the number example because I think that gives some clarity, like
Okay.
it's a percentage of that group of
the
people.
resident
Yes.
owners. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
So really, there's a few points in here that definitely needed some direction on, or some consensus on. The statement of interest being the first step, staff's suggesting 80% requirement. That triggers resources, and so staff believes that it's important to have a larger commitment from applicants. Then is an application fee appropriate? Right now, there's $2,000 in the suggested policy. Is that appropriate? Does it need to be more? Does it need to be less?
Who pays the $2,000?
The applicants.
Each applicant?
No, I mean, so if it's a neighborhood, that would be the applicant, the
Okay.
petitioner, so it would be that neighborhood.
So with that example, being a neighborhood, then would that fee fold into what, or is it going to be due and payable up front? Or is it going to fold into the assessment?
Paid up front. It's paid up front, whether or not it's folded into the total cost. It's really just to fund the resources necessary to do the work, just like any other permit fee.
So,
What are you asking? What do you want?
For the fee?
Yeah.
Well, staff's got 2,000 plugged in there, believes that that's justified.
And I like the idea of 80%, because 51% don't get it. Because I might be strapped if I'm the 49th percent.
It's one of the fundamental, I think, issues in
I think
past
that's the
experience.
absolute way to go. And I don't know about a petition that would require 100%, because you're never going to get
Right.
some of the folks to agree to it.
Yeah, that would be my comment is the 100%, I just don't think we're always going to have that one guy that's going to say, I'm not going to sign anything.
Yeah, you're going to like me.
period. So I'm fine with it being higher than the 80%, but I think 100% is probably unrealistic. And I don't think we want to allow one resident owner to hold up the entire project.
and so like what you were using, the comment about 100 houses, okay? So that means it would be like, $20 a house, so to speak, if you had 100 and they're all chipped in for the 2,000. So, okay, I mean,
Should the number be as high as 80, or should it be lower? I think 80% of the required interest, but I don't know if we need that big number to pull it off.
In the statement of interest or in the petition?
Well, but the petition, you're never going to get 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess either drop it down to 80% or maybe 75%. But
On the petition or on the,
the petition, sorry.
okay.
So what matrix was used to come up with the 80 on the statement of interest? Is that something that's common within other municipalities or?
Yeah, it must have been what we found in the benchmarking.
What happened in my district is they got to 51%, and the person that started the project moved out of the area. He
So,
used to work for us.
Gotcha.
so, Mr. Fisher, question for you. Is this the crux of what you want our input on? Or is there more coming?
No, these would be the 3 items, and then I mentioned the 120, does it need to be 180? Just level of comfort with.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because Erin Strika is here, and this was the portion that she wanted to have comment on, so
Yes.
I just wondered if maybe we go ahead and recognize her now
Sure.
to the
Come up with a number.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Erin, if you want to
No pressure, Erin.
yeah, it's all on you.
It's all riding on you, no pressure.
I thought, let's hear from you, and that may, add more to this discussion we're having. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So just to start off, I want to tell you that your public works staff are heroes. They've worked really hard on this, and I'm really pleased that a lot of the lessons learned from this very difficult Friendship Heights project have found their way into policy. There's a clear timeline, there's a short timeline. The thing is, I read it and I understood it, which is really exciting for a UG policy. Over the course of this, what I've heard from UG staff over and over again is they want to raise the barrier of entry to this to make sure that people are serious. And what I've heard over and over again from community members is they want to know really clearly what they're committing to, what exactly they're paying for, and exactly how much it's going to be. And I think they've made a lot of progress in getting to a policy that does both of those things. And I also think that both the UG staff and residents have shared a really strong commitment to finding a way to use this economic development tool to improve neighborhoods, just not maybe quite there yet. So on that percentages specifically, I think you're absolutely right. You're never going to get to 100% of Wyandotte Countyans for anything ever. If I were in charge of the world, I would change the way I would flip those 2 percentages. I would use a higher percentage for the statement of interest. I think 80% is appropriate for a statement of interest. And then a lower percentage for the full petition, because in between, I'm interested in paying for this and I will pay for this, you'll definitely lose some people. My thought, and Jeff's the expert, but I would think 66% for the full petition still raises it quite a bit above the 51% that it was before. It's still a super majority, but it is attainable, and attainable by your residents who don't get paid to do this, knocking on each other's doors, gathering all those signatures. Can I speak briefly about the $2,000 fee?
Sure.
I think Catherine over there may have something to say about this too, but that is doable for a lot of neighborhoods, but very intimidating for some, even if eventually doable. And I'm wondering if we could get a little bit creative with other ways a neighborhood could demonstrate that they're serious. And then the last thing I wanted to say is I think there is a missing step in the policy as it's currently written in between statement of interest and formal petition, where we hear from the commission whether they're willing to share that cost and by how much. So my understanding is that the assumption with the benefit district is residents carry the whole cost, but the commission can decide to put some of the UG's money into a benefit district. You look really confused right now. So
I was just looking to legal to confirm that that's correct.
So yes, it is correct. The commission can use money to help pay the costs of the district, benefit district.
Okay.
Don't we have a
timeout-
set amount of
timeout,
money
Aaron.
set?
Go ahead.
Don't we have a set amount of money set aside for that already?
No, I don't believe so.
So we don't have the 50/50? Okay.
It's just,
Okay, and this is also, was a sidewalk project that, so that's where people are confused, as we were confused last time this came in front of us. There's the 50/50 program, which is different than this.
yeah, 50/50 is mostly for replacement of existing.
Thank you. That's the
Be a
difference.
whole new,
This is new sidewalks. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Aaron, please.
So just as an example, Friendship Heights, when Public Works staff gave us the numbers estimate, it was wildly unaffordable for most of our residents.
Right.
But part of it was affordable. And there were a lot of residents saying, is there any way we could get the commission to meet us here to invest in this along with us? We're willing to pay for it. We just can't pay that much. What can we work out? So I'm wondering if in this policy could be added a step where the commission tells the neighborhood, we're going to support you with X amount, or we're not going to support this, pay for it on your own.
Okay, Commissioner Kane.
Would we have to like set aside some monies from our budget for that?
I think we would. Kathleen?
So the $2,000 that was determined, it was based on an estimate of the expected amount of staff time that would be undertaken in order to carry the project up to the point where there would be a petition filed. So that would be staff time that's being reimbursed by the $2,000. So if we
Time out,
were to
though. I'm
diminish it
sorry.
to-
I apologize for interrupting you. I think we're talking about a different thing.
I'm thinking that if it costs $200,000 and they come up to commission and say we can pay 100 and they have to pay 100,
So the
we would have,
actual,
we would have to have some money set aside for that event. And, because that, I mean,
We don't.
I don't know how you do it with, if you didn't have money set aside.
yeah, I guess what we can do is look to insert something in this policy that, so we have that discussion at some point, right? And it's, that might cover some very small scale applications, but we're likely to receive an application here and there that's large.
well, and
we would
this,
have to then program it years out.
I mean, this test project sort of kind of was a hugely expensive.
Yeah.
Let's see, Commissioner? Go ahead.
Well, one, I like the idea where they come up and say,
Right.
we got X amount of dollars and we want you to kick an X amount of dollars and let's see if we can meet somewhere in the middle. I think that's great. And we have to start somewhere, but I do think somewhere, somehow, we're gonna have to set some monies aside just for like a pilot to get it started.
Right, and I think for purposes of the policy, if we can insert language that says, and we will be open to discussion of cost share. And then I think I had Commissioner Philbrook and Commissioner Johnson, both with a comment or question. So Commissioner Philbrook. Oh, Commissioner
So-
Johnson.
Are we referring now to the cost, the total size of the project itself? So in other words, it was $1 million
Yes.
project
Yes.
that the neighborhood would be responsible potentially for either all of it or some percentage of that. So if it was 50/50, then they would be responsible for 500,000 and we would be willing to put some in there. Okay. That's going to be tough, I think. Just because if you just put in, I've learned just to put in a sidewalk from, a school down the street, it's $1 million or $1.2 million. And I don't know where we would be able to just arbitrarily pull money from in order to stick it into a pot of a fund to, it just seems a bit arbitrary to me in terms of how we would come about determining how to do that, the mechanics of it. Now, I just want to put that out there. Secondly, with regard to the application fee, I could see where $2,000 would be a bit much for some of my neighborhoods if they wanted to do something like that. So, Ms. Stryker, you said that there might be some alternative ways. Have you all talked about what alternative ways we might look at the application fee itself?
Yeah, my understanding is Ms. Irwin over there spoke with Jeff about maybe a $2,000 fee or an organized neighborhood group is supporting the project so that people have already kind of come together, organized, put a little bit of time in, filed that application with Livable Neighborhoods. I thought that was a cool idea. Sorry to step on her toes. But just some other option that you could get that fee waived. Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
So my name's Catherine Irwin. I got roped into all this when I bought a house and it turned out it had septic. Whoops. And so, you know, you live and you learn. It was really cute. So I was inspired to kind of serve my community because I realized there was an urgent need in this part of South Argentine to upgrade from septic to sewer. And we're in these very tiny residential lots and, you know, it's really not where you should have a septic system anymore. So I've somehow managed to make myself or get elected to be president of my neighborhood association because I have a passion for sewers, and here we are. Alluding to this $2,000 fee, my recommendation to Mr. Fisher and talking to Ms. Stryka was that the $2,000 fee is a very appropriate amount. You know, given how much work Public Works will have to put into these efforts, that fee is very fair. And it's there in an effort to avoid superfluous applications or applications that haven't been thought through by the community in which they are hoping to be installed. So my recommendation was that the $2,000 fee stay unless you are a registered neighborhood group with the Livable Neighborhoods Task Force. That Livable Neighborhoods Task Force requires a yearly memorandum of understanding for each neighborhood group. So that requires a commitment to serve not only their neighborhood, but the interests of the unified government. The way that I read that is it means that they should not submit any kind of application that would place an undue burden on the UG to use resources for applications that are not legitimate. The same thing could be said for any neighborhood business revitalization organization like RDA that is contracted to do good for the UG. So it would be an important kind of step away from that fee for neighborhood groups like yours that could register, get together, get bylaws, and approach this as a group for the benefit of not only their community, but for the UG's interest as well.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Commissioner Philbrook, did you have a comment or question? Did I skip over you?
I can handle being skipped over. It helps me because then I get even more questions. Thank you for the comments about the fee, okay? Because yes, it does cost us. Anytime somebody brings something forward and they want to do something, it doesn't matter how wonderful it's going to be, it still costs all of us tax money to pay to have our folks do that work, okay? And if we're spending money on that, then we're not spending money on a pothole or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, I still think we need to have that money, you know, pay for that somehow. Although I do really like your suggestion about the community groups being, maybe fostering that forward. Is that what you're saying? In other words, they bring it forward and they have an MOU with the city anyway because they have a contract. But on the other hand, and I like that, but on the other hand, then it may feel pretty heavy-handed to folks that don't have a group or don't live in a neighborhood with a group.
Sure.
See what I'm saying?
I do. I'm in the process now of putting these groups together. SANA, or the South Argentine Neighborhood Association, was defunct for a number of years, and the process to create that neighborhood association is roughly 30 days. It's not particularly onerous. There's a lot of guidance through the Livable Neighborhoods group, and we were able to kind of cobble it together in 30 days. And that kind of level of organization and, you know, the MOU with the UG, I feel should give some level of comfort to the commission as well as Public Works that the application being brought forth before them was a legitimate one.
So I have a question for our lawyer. And so how much water does an MOU hold, you know, in a situation like this? You know,
I don't think anything.
it's right, it's not
Not
binding.
binding, no.
So it's a nice thought, but it's not literally binding. So it's great to see so I'm not anti what you're doing. I'm just trying to think from both sides of this, that yes, it looks like that then in fact that group is responsible, okay, in the beginning. But there's no law holding anybody's feet to the fire, even though it's the group coming forward, all right? So that's where my quandary is in this whole thing. I mean, I'm sure we can figure a way, but I don't know what that way is.
Commissioner,
We're really creative, so.
Commissioner Kane, did you have something? Sorry. Aaron, thank you.
I'm just gonna step over here because I got.
Rattle off some numbers. You said
66%.
Yeah.
Remind me what the 66%, which spot that went in?
So I was suggesting 80% for the statement of interest, which is first and just says, I'm interested in paying for this, but I'm not committing yet. 66% for the formal petition, which says, go ahead and tax me.
Okay, I want to make a motion to what she just said.
I second that.
So I will, go ahead.
That's a more fair, you know, we've asked you to come here and tell us what's going on, then give us some guidance, we appreciate yours, and I think that would work better.
So go ahead and make a motion
Yeah, make a motion for what.
for this 80% statement of interest.
Well, hold on. Can it
Wait a
be
minute.
66.67?
Commissioner Johnson.
All righty.
Oh, my God.
Thirds, I'm just saying.
66%. Okay.
Wait a minute, we gotta get this right, 66.
0.67.
I would just remind, this is an information-only item. You don't need to make a motion.
What?
7.
Well, actually, I'm showing that it's an item that we're voting on, so.
You're right, Commissioner.
Now, I am accepting your motion and second, but I think I have Commissioner Markley yet with a comment. Go ahead.
Well, we still have to decide about the fee issue.
The application fee. So,
This is a start until we can.
no, absolutely. Okay, so let's
gonna solve your
do
problem.
that. Can we,
We gotta start somewhere, right?
may we,
Financing the part, neither, just getting us some groundwork to play with until.
Well, this is the application fee is the other part that we need to.
okay,
You have to have that.
I'm going to ask legal. Do we need one vote or can we split this out into two?
You can split it out into two if that's the way you wish to do it. So you can do it that way, but it'd be preferable to do one. That would
Okay.
cover it all.
All right, so we will hold and create one motion at the end of the discussion. Did I see additional requests for public comment on this item? If you would come forward to the lectern.
So,
Yes.
I had prepared additional comments on two other points on the policy. Do you mind if
Okay.
I finish, or would you like her to go and then I can?
Go ahead and finish.
No,
But
it's-
Okay.
I understand about raising the private. That don't make no sense.
Okay, go ahead.
For that.
Sure, I apologize. So the last two things I think we alluded to, or Mr. Fisher alluded to, was this 120 days requirement. So the way that the policy is currently written, there's what's called a sundown provision on signatures. So as soon as you get your first signature, there's 120 days until every signature expires or your statement of interest expires. I specifically am working on a sanitary sewer district. That is a different policy than this one, but will mirror it very closely. And I will be the one doing so. I have about 150 households in my area. I'll be going door to door to get those signatures. I have a family and a job, and that 120-day policy basically requires that I get a signature a day, which just seems very cumbersome for me on my own.
I agree.
In talking to Mr. Fisher, we proposed potentially a 180-day at a minimum, just to allow me more time and make sure that we are adhering to the UG's desire to have those signatures be current. I would also welcome some discussion on whether or not, if at the time of the signature they were a resident owner, whether or not the burden should be on me to maintain that signature through the sundown. that seems pretty onerous for me to track who's moving in or out during the period in which I'm trying to get signatures. So I welcome thoughts on that too. And last but not least, I just wanted to make sure to echo Ms. Strika's thoughts on welcoming the commission board to respond. There is a provision in this agreement where there is a 90-day requirement after the submission of the statement of interest for the county engineer to provide cost per parcel to the applicant or us. We kind of propose that there be an additional within 60-day period where the commission must kind of welcome some sort of discussion or collaboration with the applicant about potential cost-sharing provisions. That was the totality of my thoughts. Thank you.
The last item was the within 60 days of the cost per parcel analysis.
Yes.
A conversation about potential cost sharing.
Yep, the way that I kind of have it written here was basically some sort of mechanism within that 60 days for the commission to provide feedback to the applicant on cost sharing proposals following the cost per parcel, whether it be an informal meeting or a discussion or what have you. I welcome the thoughts of the commission, but certainly would like something there within some sort of timely period.
Anyone have comments on that? And Commissioner Markley, I know you had a comment as well.
So as far as the application fee, I think the concern for me would be, we talked about $20 per household doesn't sound bad, but if you're a smaller benefit district, then that cost goes up, which is sort of contrary to the reality that if it's a smaller area, it's probably a smaller project. So we're going to charge them more for their smaller project. So I think it should be $2,000 or a certain amount per resident owner property, whichever is less, is how I would prefer to see it worded. And I don't know what that dollar amount is, whether it's $10, $15, $20, something in that range where we're saying it's the $2,000 or a certain amount per resident owner property. Now, some of those resident owners are not going to want to pay, so somebody's going to have to pick up that extra, right? But that, again, incentivizes the neighborhood to get people on board, because if they go around to get signatures and everybody says, I'm not paying that $10, then they're not going to pay the additional taxes if they're not willing to pay $10. So it kind of, it would be eye-opening for the person who is going door to door. If they can't collect $10 out of these people, they're not going to pay $500 extra on their taxes. So anyway, that's my idea for how to handle that and make it fair for the smaller benefit districts as well as for the larger ones where that cost might come in as a lower amount per household.
So that would be a $2,000 ceiling then?
Right.
For that.
So I have a question about that. So asking you guys, how would that work for you? Because you guys had to sit down and figure out around a $2,000 cost to the city. So let's say it's, sizably smaller. Is it going to cost you that much less? Is it by size or by things you have to do, period, either way? I'm just asking.
Well, I like the idea. I guess I'd like to take a little time to think through that alternative. And
So that makes me wonder if we should adopt part of your policy and leave part of your policy for further review and bringing back.
It's only going to have to go to full commission in a package, so
Right.
let's wait till we got a package.
All right.
we can describe all the points in there.
So because I think we've got multiple things going on, and some of which I think there's consensus around the percentages, for example. The application fee, I think, requires a little bit more analysis. I'm not opposed to the notion that's been brought forward by the public around a registered neighborhood group. If not this, then you're a registered neighborhood group, and she makes a point, there is an annual MOU signed. But the question I have for that is, does it create any further legal relationship or obligation on the part of that registered neighborhood group that because they exist, the application fee is waived? So that's kind of what, and then further, do we extrapolate that out to a homeowners association? The way that she included the mention of the NBR. So anyway, I think now I'm hearing a possible table of a vote for a little bit more thought and bringing it back. Would that be appropriate?
Sure.
All right, so I think what I need is a motion to table.
Second. When are we going to bring it back, though? That's the question. Before we vote on it, can we put a timeline on that?
December?
Do we even have Public Works in December?
That's what I was just wondering.
But I think it's early. I would say we won't have it by December. Shoot for January.
Yeah, we should be able to.
Well, December or January, let's say that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to have roll call then. Roll call on tabling, please. Oh, I apologize.
Hello, my name is Sheila Jackson. I live at 2515 Haskell Avenue. As I was listening to you all talk about this proposal they just brought up, I thought I heard one of you all say, raise the pilot.
No.
Didn't I hear a gentleman's? Okay, because I don't think we should be paying. Okay, but I don't feel like we should be paying or the pilot should be raised or anything where it's not helping where I live.
Thank you. And I will clarify that we did not discuss that in that conversation, but thank you. All right, so we need a roll call on this motion, which is to table the vote on the benefit district policy, please.
Roll call. Groneman?
Aye.
Philbrick?
Aye.
Markley? Aye. Kane? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye. Thank you very much. I know that you've put a lot of work in, but I think we're just working toward making it better.
No, completely understandable. Thank you.
All righty. Item 9 is an addendum to our agreement providing services into Loring. Who's presenting this? Jeff?
Actually, I'll go ahead and take this with Misty as
Sure.
my backup.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, I just wanted to update you on the fact that we have been working with the city of Bonner Springs on our agreement for the services that they provide for us in the Loring area, which is southwest of the incorporated area of Bonner Springs. We, Misty and I met with them several times in August and September. And in October, it became clear to us that there were quite a few historical elements that we needed to work through to bring back a more comprehensive long-term agreement. So what's before you tonight is approval for an extension through 2020. During the next year, we will be bringing back some recommended changes for agreement that will extend beyond 2020, hopefully for a number of years.
Thank you. Discussion? Motion?
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second on this addendum to this agreement. Could I have roll call on this, please?
Roll call. Groneman? Aye. Philbrick?
Aye.
Markley?
Aye.
Kane? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye. Did you call my name?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That motion carries. The next item is bringing forward Mr. Jeremy Rogers and staff with Parks and Recreation. This is an information item, and we will discuss our Parks and Recreation fees. And I will turn it over to you, Jeremy.
Great, thank you, Commissioners. Here with me is Assistant Director Angel Obert and Assistant Director Jack Webb. So thank you guys for joining us. In 2017, Kathleen and I got together and talked about our fees, and Parks fees had not been raised in at least over 20 years. So we knew we needed to do something and we needed to evaluate those. So we brought in MGT Consulting and they looked at our fees. And I'm here to tell you tonight what those results were from their consulting. It was determined that the national average for recovery rate is 27%. Our recovery rate in 2018 was 7.4, so we're way behind the national average. We talked to numerous Parks and Recreation departments throughout the Kansas City area, and each one of those departments made it a habit to review their fees on an annual basis. So we're 20 years behind everybody else. So this will hopefully bring us up to speed, and we will continue to evaluate our fees on a yearly basis. Okay, let's get started. Davis Hall, for example, that's our most recognized hall. It's our most rented. Currently, to rent Davis Hall is $475 for residents, $675 for non-residents. Comparing that to other rental halls in the area, we are definitely well below the rental rate. The main difference between our facility and those facilities have commercialized kitchens. Ours does not. Other than that, they're very similar, comparing apples to apples. I won't go through every number, but this is just some of revenue that we brought in throughout for over the last 3 years of how we're trending. Our reservations have been pretty steady. If you look at George Mine, one of the reasons that those reservations were down was because that building was closed for some maintenance work. So here's the recommendations that MGT suggested we do. They suggest that we keep Davis Hall the same as is Monday through Thursday, but at a weekend rate. That weekend rate would go up $650 and $850, and then $800 and $1,000 for resident, non-resident, and that's for weekends. Same with George Mine. Keep the weekday the same, increase the weekend $575, $750, $650 to $750 in 2021. However, keep in mind that we are already taking reservations for 2020 on all these halls. So this is actually extended a year. So 2021 would be the first fee increase, 2022 would be the second fee increase, and that's only for our rental halls. Pearson, we'd actually look to lower during the week to $600 and $800. It's our largest community center. It is not widely used for outside organizations because it is so big. The professional recommendations on our shelters, we have 4 different sizes of shelters. An example of a regular shelter would be Leo Alvey, the shelter at Leo Alvey. Example of an extra large shelter would be the beach shelter at the lake. So, and everything else falls in between. So, as you can see, the increase to 45, 60, 90, and 120. Going to our community centers, we have 7 community centers. Each of them have a gym. Each of them have a multi-purpose room. And those are suggested to go up from 20 to 35, 35 to 50, and 50 to 65. Moving on to our special events, we have 3 different sizes of special events. We don't do a lot of the large special events. Most of ours are in the small to medium. And as you can see, those fees are suggested to go up to $150 to $200, from $350 to $425, and then $1,000 to $1,300.
And I don't know what you mean by that special event.
A special event is if you want to hold an event that invites the community. Let's say you want to put on a concert. That would probably fall under the large 500 plus. We would charge you to do that event. A small special event would be, let's say you want to do a special program at a park. And that would fall under the small event. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. All of our fields are outdoor fields. If you want to hold a tournament, let's say you want to hold a youth baseball tournament, Currently, we charge $100. Their recommendation is $150. If you want to use a soccer field, currently we charge $50. They're suggesting that we break it up and rent those fields in 4-hour blocks, going at $25 per 4 hours. Currently, if you want to have a practice at a baseball field, let's say you want to practice at Wyandotte County Park, we have 2 baseball fields there. Our current rate is $2. Their suggestion is $5. For baseball and softball diamonds, if you want to have a game per hour, we're keeping that at $25 per their recommendations. Chemical sales, as overseeing the noxious weed program, by state statute, we're required to sell chemicals. Currently, we sell Imitator Plus at 16, their suggestion 19, and then Corn Belt 17, their suggestion 20.
Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am.
If we could just stop there for a minute, I just think that's something that many people don't know is available. If you could just stop quickly and tell the community where those sales take place and how to call if they want more information.
Those sales take, and Jack, he oversees this program very heavily. His staff do that, but correct me if I'm wrong. We sell once a month on Thursdays from 9 a.m. to noon out at the Noxious Weed Building at Wyandotte County Lake. And we sell a broadleaf, that's the Imitator Plus. That's basically a weed and feed type chemical. And then we also sell a Roundup type chemical that kills everything. And that's the Corn Belt. And that's March through October or until we run out of product.
And the phone number, if someone wanted to call and find out like what day of the month to come, would be what?
That would be 913-573-8327.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the fees. Wyandotte County Lake, we have current slips, boat slips that we rent out to the community. For residents, it's $450. For non-residents, it's $600. And then approved in the 2020 budget is covered slips. So currently, all of our slips are uncovered. We're looking to bring in some covered slips to add that to the community.
How many covered ones are you bringing in?
8, I believe.
How does somebody get a covered one?
We'll go through the list of people that are currently have a slip, offer them. If they choose not to, then we'll go to the remaining list of individuals that are still on the waiting list.
And how many new ones are you bringing in this year?
8.
I'm number 5 on the waiting list.
There are 2 boats per slip, so keep that in mind. We compared ourselves to some regional lakes. Longview Lake for an uncovered slip is $1,600. A covered slip is $1,700. And then Smithville Lake, which is north of here, is $1,700 for a covered slip. Here's the revenue that we brought in. I won't go through this. Obviously, the lake creates a large revenue stream for our department. So that lake is very important to the success of our department. Here's some of the recommendations that they recommended. Currently, as I said, it's $450 to $600. Their suggestion, we bump that up to $600 and $900 for resident, non-resident, and then 2021, $750 to $1,100, $1,125. The new covered slips will be $1,500 for resident and $2,250 for non-residents. The resident boating permit will go from 10 to 15 for the daily, and then season will go 25 to 30. Non-residents will go 20 to 25 on the boat permits, on the daily permits, and then the season permits will go from 50 to 60. Fishing licenses will stay the same. Currently for resident daily, it's 10, resident season 20, non-resident daily 20, and non-resident season it's 40. So we'll keep those the same per the recommendations of the MGT. We are this year adding a discount for veterans, 50% off for all current active military as well as former active military. And that's just for fishing licenses. As we looked at this, we compared ourselves to other like communities. It's very hard to find a like community like Wyandotte County throughout the country, but we compared ourselves to Dayton, Ohio, Provo, Utah, and Tallahassee, Florida. And you can look through there and kind of see how we compare on this is comparing our athletic fees. So we're very well under the mark as we compare to the nation as a whole. Here's our trend of how we've done on sports and aquatics. We're pretty much trending up on most of them, so that's a good thing. Youth baseball, it's trending down. I've noticed that in my career in Parks and Recreation in the Kansas City metro area, that number goes up and down as the Royals season goes up and down. That's a very interesting stat. We stay pretty solid in soccer. Soccer's obviously our most popular sport.
A question on how many non-resident people have slips out there?
Oh, out at Wyandotte County Lake?
Correct.
I don't have that number in front of me, but it's not very many. It's mostly residents.
Okay.
I can get that number for you.
I would like to get that number, but I think we should give it to us before we would give it to outside people, and people like me wouldn't have to wait 8 years to get it in a slip.
Noted. Here's our participation numbers again on youth sports. You guys can take a look at that as you feel deemed. The recommendation, they're recommending we take youth sports from 15 to 20. Our spring break and summer program, they recommend keeping that 40. For adult soccer, 1,500 to 1,700. Adult softball, 325 to 400. And then adult volleyball staying the same at 90. And then increasing the daily entrance to Parkwood Pool, $1 to $2. If all these fees were accepted and participation stayed the same, this is what our revenue would be over the next 2 years. We'd go from 475 to 604 in 2 years. It's not a lot. As you guys know, we have a $63 million deficit per the master plan. It'd take a lot of years to generate $63 million, but it does help every little bit in the right direction. Our recovery rate would significantly increase from 7% up to almost 20%. So that would definitely help and put us on even keel as far as the national standard goes. If implemented, these fees would take effect January 2nd, 2020. That's the first day of operations for the new year. And that's it.
Questions or comments? And it is an information-only item, so there's no vote on this item, and we thank you for.
I have a question.
Commissioner Johnson.
So what happens if we don't increase those programs? I mean, those fees relative to you all's budget? I mean, what is the worst that happens?
Our budget stays the same, and we look for other ways to increase our revenue so that we can do more through grants, through alternative funding, partnerships, things like that.
I'm just asking that question so the public can hear us as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Okay, and thank you very much for that. And now we are at the public agenda time on our standing committee, and we have 2 requests to address the standing committee. And the first one is Ms. Mank. We have an appearance regarding Parks and Recreation, the Juvenile Service Center, and after-school programs. If you would state your name and city, and you will have up to 5 minutes, please.
My name is Tasir Mank, and I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. So, I was coming to speak about Parks and Rec and after-school programs. So I wanted to start off by saying, when I was growing up here in Wyandotte County, all the parks and recreation, or all the recreation centers had games or foosball tables or arcades or different activities for the kids to do. They also came with tutoring, mentoring, and counseling if needed as well. They had students from Sumner there who volunteered and police officers who volunteered and did different things with the kids. That ensured that the kids stayed out of trouble. The Parks and Recreation and Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools collaborating more together would ensure the best for our kids as well, and would also ensure or try to keep them kids from filling up the new jail that you guys are building over there. More funding from unified government would ensure that our kids wouldn't be filling up their jail as well. That would help them to get Wi-Fi in all of the recreation centers or air conditionings in the gyms. Maybe funding for more after-school programs in the gyms. As kids, we had a summer camp where we went to out of town with the FOP camp. The police officers took us to camp as kids. They have none of these things anymore, and that's why you guys are probably building the new jail over there. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that, if you guys want to comment.
Okay, so do you want to go into your second item, appearance with Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, and so the second item is Ms. Sheila Jackson and Ms. Mank regarding neighborhood development and BPU charges. And again, Ms. Jackson, if you would state your name and city, and then you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Sheila Jackson, 2515 Haskell Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. I was having a big problem with my light bill, and UG and the light company and I got together, and we did get it worked out. We got it fixed. Thank you, Ms. Byman, because you were one of the people that were there to help me and all that. As far as development, we don't even have a grocery store in the north part of Wyandotte County. We were going to get one, but Argentine wound up getting our grocery store. But Argentine wound up getting our grocery store. We don't even have a laundromat. We don't have anything. We don't have places for the kids to play or feel safe when we put them in the park, because there's always seem to be some form of drive-by or just something that's not right going on. So that's my major concern. We need a grocery store, and like I said, I want to thank you all as far as my light bill and all that, but we still have to eat. We have to go all the way out. I mean, you said Price Chopper on 48th and State wasn't no good, and they got all kinds of business. We had the Springs. It made big money, but it was a place where kids hung out, and they did get in trouble in the Springs, and I understand that. But we don't have anything in Wyandotte County right now for these kids. If we can just come together and get a special after-school program, a building big enough where they could play sports and have tutoring and like the YMCA, but they can't even get in there. So that's all I have to say.
I want to thank both of you for spending time. Yes.
I wanted to know where I could get a copy of the Northeast Master Plan, like what exactly it consists of.
Do you have access to the internet?
Yes. Is it on your website?
It is. You can find it on the website, and you can always send me an email, and I'd be happy to send back a link.
Okay.
to you for the whole plan. Commissioner
Commissioner?
Johnson.
Should be under www.neamasterplan.com or .org, one or the other.
And I did want to comment on Jeremy's thing. Some of the fees that are, I can understand some of them can go up, but some of the fees, like for instance, Parkwood Pool, some of those kids get out and they carry people's groceries just to get that dollar to get in that pool for the summer, so to have something to do. And it is the only public pool that we have, so I just don't agree with the funding going up. I also don't agree with our coaches who volunteer to coach these kids and these teams having to pay to use the gym for their kids to practice, or pay to use the field for their kids to practice, because they are volunteering their time. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And that is the conclusion of Public Works and Safety. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Markley for Administration and Human Services.
All right. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Public comment is welcome on standing committee items.
Yes.
Anyone wishing to speak on an item may do so when the item is up for discussion. You'll have up to, it says 3 minutes, but I thought it was 5, to state your comments. Come forward to the microphone, and commission members, please use your microphones as well. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Kane? Here. Bynum?
Here.
Markley?
Here. We have no revisions to tonight's agenda. Our first order of business is the minutes from our September 23rd meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved. We have 3 items on our agenda this evening. The first under the committee agenda is the Diversity Ordinance. And I will invite Ms. Reed and Mr. Rocha to brief us on this item.
Good evening, Commissioner. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Evening, Assistant County Administrators. Sharon Reed, Procurement Manager, and Richard Rocha, the Diversity Coordinator. We're here today to explain the sunset of the Division 2 Ordinance, December the 31st of 2019, and to facilitate some of the information on how we plan to continue to reach those goals. And Richard will go through the PowerPoint.
Yeah, if you go to the first PowerPoint. Yep. In here.
Let's push the side. Okay, we got it.
Here we go. Okay. What we have here, this is the history of the ordinance, 01709, and it was effective in 2006. We, Unified Government was part of an area-wide diversity study. As you can tell, it has gone up to the 2 divisions as well. The MBE-WB program for Unified Government for construction contracts exceeding $250,000. We bring this up because these Division 2 sunsets at the end of this year on December 31st, 2019. As you can see here, this is what our total procurement, total cost is. These are all purchase orders that we do out of the procurement department. The lower number on the bottom is the number of the purchase order, and then the numbers on top is the total cost to what we use in the procurement department.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rocha. So what you're saying is 96 million, for example, in 2018 is the total price of the business the unified government did?
The total, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
As for the public work construction projects, over $250,000. As you can see in 2016, the cost is there, the cost in 2017 as well, and the cost in 2018. 2019 is not on there because there are still 7 to 8 projects that are still in process right now as we speak. As you can see on the bottom is what the total public work construction cost is, and on the lower box, you can see what the MBE-WBE spend is. On our MBE-WB construction projects over $250,000, as you can see in the last 3 years, from 2016 to 2018, 19% of our funding has gone to MBE-WBE. And as our report card, in 2016, we had 14 projects, 3 did not meet the goals. 2017, we had 10 projects, 4 did not repeat the goals. And then in 2018, we had 15 projects and only one didn't meet the goal.
Can I interject real quick?
Go ahead.
Are those the ones that did not meet, is that in addition to the ones that didn't meet, or is that just included in that? So in other words, of the 14, 3 did not meet. Is that 3 on top of the 14, or is
No,
that
sir.
part of the 14?
That's a total. There's 3 out of the 14.
Out of the 14? Okay, thank you.
And on the percentages that you see there, the 3, the 4, and the 1, the 3 in 2016 and the 4 in 2017, we did an average, and there were less than 2% that we missed our goal. The one for 2018, we realized on that goal, it was sent out to 7 MBE, WBE companies. All 7 bids came in extremely higher than what the lowest bid could be. And that's the only reason why we didn't meet the goal in 2018. The obstacles we have here, we have no current disparity study in Wyandotte County, KCK. Our accounting system is not a reporting tool. Therefore, the only data we report is on any constructions over 250,000. And as of right now, only the MBE, WBE, LBE, and SBE, that SBN information is not available except for construction projects. Our planning going forward, we'd like to implement meaningful remedies to increase participation on MBE, WBEs, LBEs on UG contracts. We continue the MBE, WBE, LBE subtracting goals for the construction project, $250 and up for the next 3 years. And we continue to use the good faith effort to meet goals. Part of how we do this is our community outreach. We want to be as transparent as possible. We want to be a partner and participate for our communities, encourage conversation. We invite new customers, new businesses to come into our office. We want them to sit down with us. We want to explain to them exactly the rules and regulations and how they can get jobs here with unified government. We want to educate and offer opportunities to small business enterprises and contracting opportunities. We've hosted a couple outreach events. We've had a couple of vendor fairs over at Memorial Hall. We had 88 companies, different vendors from Wyandotte County that came in. We had over 400 people show up for that event as well. We still want to continue to hold training sessions and seminars, and we'd like to provide a little bit more resources for small and disadvantaged businesses who need help to obtain city contracts.
If I could just wrap it up in my head the way I understand it, the current ordinance expires.
Correct.
Next month. We know we need a diversity study. We know it's too expensive, and so we're going to join with Casey Moe, but that's not going to happen until 2023.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
2021 or 2023, whichever comes sooner. We're going to, meanwhile, impose our own goals on ourselves, if you will. So we're going to voluntarily continue the outreach and participation that we seek that was within the ordinance. And I know that, and I appreciate the small business liaison, because that was one of the things I was hoping to hear you say, is one of the tactics we will use is through our economic development department. And I think you know that whatever we can do to also drive people to sign up, as you know, we've talked about this and we've met about this, to sign up to receive the notifications. And the more we can drive that website out and whatever we can do to help you, we want to be able to do that. This is really important. And just lastly, you'll keep your own records the best way you're able, I guess in the same way you are now, because you're saying we still don't have the software needed.
Right.
So you'll continue to work on the record keeping the way you do now, but could we maybe in a 6 or 9 month time period come back and just hear from you about how's it going? Are we being successful with staying in compliance even though the ordinance itself is expired?
I have Commissioner Kane and then Johnson.
With regard to the accounting or the system that we would need to track that, do you have any sense of how much that would cost?
Yes, currently we are in the fact-finding mode. We've looked at SciSoft was about 20,000. We looked at Prism, which can be about 45,000. And we're also working with Workday, which would be a complete ERP system. So there are several softwares that we're currently looking at.
And will you all be at some point making a recommendation to us about a system, or how do we need to go through that process? I think it's something that we need to give some weight to in terms of when and how, and I know we got a budget for next year or whatever, but I don't think that we need to be kind of just out in the wind with regard to this. I think we need to have something that is measurable and something that we can trust going forward on that, as that's one issue.
Ms. Steven, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the commissioner's question. We are looking at this as a UG-wide team, and Sharon alluded to a couple of options that we have, but that's where we're at, working for that as quickly as possible. This does obviously impact operations in a variety of different ways on the data collection component and how we are able to pull data outside of the $250,000 and up projects that we have. So absolutely, it's something that we're working on. We will be back to you hopefully within the next 6 to 9 months, as someone stated over here, to be able to give you an update on how we intend to solve this problem.
9 months is a little too much. I think we need to be, I mean, we've been kind of out there for a while. Since I've been on the commission, I've had conversations about this.
Yes.
And it gets very nebulous. And so I think we need to put a little bit of heat on that. I think that in the world in which we live, and certainly with regard to the community that we are, I think that it would behoove us to put a little bit more, make that sooner than 9 months. I'd like to see it within the next 6 months. My second thing, I'm just on wordsmithing. When I saw diversity strategy, I was thinking about more of human resources. So maybe we can call this supplier diversity or something like that, or whatever the newfangled word is now for. I mean, they change it every once in a while, so whatever that is.
Commissioner Kane?
The reason we did this in 2006, because we wanted to put our local people to work. And the casino was a perfect example where they exceeded what their goal was by an astronomical number. And I think Commissioner Johnson is correct. I think this is something that we need to have for this budget so we can plan the amount of monies that they're going to need to perform this function. And the sunset was put there so we would do exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
To come back, look at it, revise the mistakes, improve where we were really good, get better where we weren't. Excuse me. And that was the plan all along, to put more people that live here to work here. And this works, you know, it was the brainchild of Nathan and a couple of them, and with some interesting conversation to go along with it. But the passion was for the people in Wyandotte County. And I think that should be it was the goal then, I believe it's our goal now, and we need to be prepared for this budget to make some adjustments for these folks.
I think it would be interesting to see of those that did not meet the goals, whether there were similarities in the type of project or the type of problems that they encountered, so we can see if there are solutions or additional resources we could provide.
Well, and then when they found out ones they were having problems with, they fixed it. And I think that's huge. And when the ones that didn't get it fixed didn't come back. So that there was some work that could have been had that they didn't meet the numbers, so don't go back to them. So, I think the numbers look pretty good, and some of them miss them for just minute reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to keep that in mind too. Some of them missed it by a mile, so we didn't go back to them. But when we can go and say, well, they missed it by this, or we submitted 20 and we didn't get enough back, because that happens too. You know, so it's a great tool. And by the numbers, you can see that we went from 15 down to 1 this year. That's awesome.
Additional questions, comments? This was your last slide, right? We didn't disrupt you, did we?
This one's it.
Oh, any questions?
So that's a good question. So this is for information only. There's not a new ordinance on the table, but this presentation is telling us we're continuing our internal operations. I don't think we need a motion, but it sounds like we may hear more about it during budget period.
That's right. That's right.
There's a lot of movement underway, so I guarantee you there's coming something real soon. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Just to let you know that we are working diligently to get you that information, and we continue the good faith efforts, with the vendors and making great strides.
Thank you, Ms. Reed and Mr. Rocha, very much. All right. That leads us to that's our only committee agenda item. We have two public agenda items. Public agenda item 1 is the appearance of Stephanie Lugo, representing Students for Life of America regarding Planned Parenthood. Stephanie, are you here? No? Okay. Item number 2, also on the public agenda, is the appearance of Kyra Lampe regarding Planned Parenthood. Kyra? Please come to the microphone, state your name and city of residency for the record, and you'll be given up to 5 minutes to make your comments.
My name is Kyra Lampe, and I'm currently in Manhattan, Kansas for school, but I'm originally from Jetmore, Kansas. So I just want to thank you for letting me be here to speak. I'm here to serve as a voice of concern and opposition to Planned Parenthood moving into Kansas City, Kansas. I'm here representing Cats for Life at Kansas State University. I serve as the Vice President of Cats for Life and also as the Kansas Co-State Captain for Students for Life of America. Cats for Life is one of 1,200 chapters of Students for Life of America, otherwise known as SFLA. SFLA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending abortion by educating students and working to cultivate and train young pro-life leaders. And I brought along another young activist to show our dedication and support for the pro-life cause. It is my understanding that Planned Parenthood is currently looking for a location to build here in the area, and I strongly urge you to prevent this from happening. Coming from a young female student, we can do better than Planned Parenthood. Kansas City does not need a Planned Parenthood for a number of reasons. 1, there is already a facility in nearby Overland Park. And 2, and most importantly, Planned Parenthood facilities are not beneficial, but in fact very harmful to the well-being of women and communities. Right next door in Overland Park, the Planned Parenthood has been cited and failed numerous inspections. According to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, these citations include failure to ensure that all employees are up to date with TB tests and immunizations, improperly billing Medicaid, and failing to inform patients of any of their rights and other required disclosures. So patients are being deceived and are not receiving the high-quality care that they deserve. In fact, right here in your neighborhood, there are multiple federally qualified health centers that offer higher quality care at more affordable cost as opposed to Planned Parenthood. For example, according to freeclinics.org, there are 7 free medical clinics in Kansas City alone. To top this off, there are 15 pregnancy resource centers or maternity homes that provide ultrasounds, pregnancy tests, STI testing, job counseling, and other support in the areas. So there are existing resources that are available to people that offer all of the services and more that Planned Parenthood does, all while not performing abortions. Furthermore, Planned Parenthood is simply a bad investment for our communities. Planned Parenthood itself reported that its number of beneficial services, such as breast exams, Pap test, prenatal care, colonoscopies, and HPV treatments have been declining since 2006. Yet the number of abortions performed annually continues to rise. What is most alarming about this is that even though these beneficial services are in fact in decline, the tax revenue, the money that we pay going into Planned Parenthood, continues to increase annually. While Planned Parenthood claims that none of our tax dollars fund abortions, they are keeping these facilities open so that more abortions are performed and more patients are hurt by the failure of these facilities to uphold and provide basic medical care. We are continuing to invest our tax dollars into an organization that continually suggests that abortion is not its #1 priority, and we are seeing our tax dollars go to an organization that is offering more and more abortions and less actually medically necessary procedures. While Planned Parenthood may not be successful at providing proper health care, it is successful at tarnishing the image of a community. Throughout its history, it has been the center of one scandal after another, including selling fetal body parts, covering up statutory rape and sex trafficking, and as mentioned previously, continually failing inspections surrounding health and safety violations. The bottom line is that Kansas City does not need Planned Parenthood. And I do not just speak from my own perspective. I have here with me over 500 signatures of individuals who are opposed to a facility moving into the city. So I speak for many people when I say that Kansas City does not need or want a Planned Parenthood, and I strongly urge you to prevent it from coming into this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That was our final agenda item, and that concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.